Hello, welcome to this video. In this video, I want to talk about the nature of the graduate study. In particular, what are PhD and master thesis, how to choose an advisor, and how to choose a suitable thesis topic, etc. Okay, let me start the slideshow here. Okay, so the title is What is a PhD and master thesis in mathematics? So let's start with like textbook definition. So first of all, we will talk about master thesis. So a master degree in an academic degree is an academic degree awarded by universities upon completion of a course of study demonstrating mastery or a high-order overview of a specific field of study or area of professional practice. All right, that's the formal definition. But what it means for mathematics is the following. First of all, master thesis, there are three key points. First, you have to investigate and understand a topic, usually chosen in collaboration with your advisor. And then you have to produce a coherent text that describes the result of this investigation. And the third part is an oral defense. Okay? And in mathematics, that's exactly how this is pursued. There are three parts, as I said here. For the investigation part, you survey a specific topic, depending on your likes or your advisor's suggestions, etc. And you have to understand and explain a published or about to be published research result. This could be a paper published a long time ago or a recent result, which is important from some points of view. Or in some cases, your master thesis could involve writing a computer program and explain the results of running it. This could be a program that is related to applied mathematics, related to computer science, or recently there are computational research topics related to algebra and other parts of mathematics as well. Okay, for example, one of my friends, when I was doing PhD, his PhD thesis was about writing a computer program that did certain computations on groups. And the key point here is maybe the main difference of the master thesis from the PhD thesis is that usually an original result is not expected in a master thesis. Usually it's a survey of a already published, already known topic or topics, usually some papers related to certain area. But sometimes during this investigation, people may come up with original results. This happens, and this is of course something very nice if it happens, but it's not part of the expected things from a master's thesis. All right. Okay, so as usual, you will pick a advisor, a master's thesis advisor or supervisor in this case, and what you should expect from your supervisor. Of course, he or she first should help you to select a suitable thesis topic. This should be, of course, based on your likings, your areas of interest, and also your supervisors should basically direct you to a topic which is interesting and has potential to be continued in your PhD studies. Okay, so this is actually a very delicate point at this point. So this requires lots of communication between you and your supervisor. And second thing that you can expect from your supervisor is to give you general advice on your coursework in your graduate studies. Okay? Which courses to take, which courses not to take. You should ask about advice from your supervisor about these topics, and of course this will be in collaboration with your in tandem with your thesis topic. So which courses will benefit you in your investigations, which are not so useful, which you should learn on your own, not to take a course, etc. So this is again something you should expect from your supervisor. And the third point is he or she should direct you to useful references related to your thesis topic. Again, a very important point here. Your thesis advisor should guide you in finding references which are related to your thesis topic, finding related articles, chapters from books or prints, preprints, etc. So again, this is an extremely important point and duty of your supervisor, because otherwise you will be lost in the vast ocean of published material. There are various articles, books written on lots of topics, and your advisor should guide you through these in a very nice manner. Fourth point, of course, is that your advisor should help explain difficult points. So when you're reading an article, a part of a book, and you encounter points which you are unable to understand, your advisor should guide you and should help you to understand these points. Okay? But of course, this requires your input to your supervisor. You should tell clearly, in a clear manner. You should tell which points you did not understand, which points are not clear, and you should ask nice questions to your supervisor so that your supervisor will be able to help you. A fifth point is that your supervisor should provide feedback on the direction of your research. That's again something very important, and which should happen in near real time. So each time you meet with your supervisor, you should get feedback on whether you are in the right direction, whether your pace is good, slow, or too fast, whether you are going too fast, missing some important points, or you are going too slow, spending too much time on some points. And you should get this feedback from your supervisor. Again, this is an important point. 6 is read and comment on drafts of your thesis. Again, this is a natural expectation from your supervisor. Once you have written a draft of your thesis, your supervisor should read it thoroughly and give you feedback about your thesis. What points are good, what points are bad, what should be the structure, what sections to add, what sections to remove, what sections to join, etc. So there should be again a healthy communication between you and your supervisor about these points. And point 7 is that your instructor should help you prepare for your defense. He or she should guide you about how your defense should be structured, what points of your investigations should be emphasized, and which points to include into your defense. Usually, your thesis will be much longer than you can talk in your defense. So you should cherry pick some important points from your thesis and include them in your defense. And in total, your defense should be a coherent talk from beginning to end. And your supervisor should guide you through this and give you feedback. Okay, what is expected from you? But before moving on to what is expected from us, maybe we should also stop and think for a couple of minutes what not to expect from your supervisor. All right? So maybe we should add this to the slide, some section, what not to expect from your supervisor. The first things that come to my mind is that your supervisor is just supervising you. He or she will, of course, guide you through this, but at the end, it is you that has to study, learn, and progress. Okay, so you should see your supervisor as a guide, but not like someone who will explain you everything, every point, and which will help you like all the way through your graduate study. It's like a guide, but at the end, it is you. This is true, especially for mathematics. It is at the end you that you has to read and understand and comprehend the topics you're learning. Okay, this is one thing that comes to my mind. So you shouldn't be over expectant from your supervisor. And next thing is maybe that comes to my mind is you should of course expect your supervisor to read and correct your thesis or give you feedback about the structure of your thesis, but he or she will not, should not, or at least you shouldn't expect that they will read it letter by letter and or word by word and give you feedback on grammar, etc., on each part of your thesis. Again, at the end, your thesis is your own work, and your supervisor is a guide for you to your thesis. So you should again at this point spend energy in writing your thesis in a nice manner in terms of language, structure, etc. But of course, you should expect a very big amount of input from your supervisor. And one can make this list longer. Maybe we'll talk later when I come to PhD. But again, there are certain things you shouldn't expect from your supervisor. At least not expect to a certain degree. All right. Next, what is expected from you during your graduate studies in masters? First, again, as I told in the previous part, you should read and try to understand the papers, books that your supervisor suggested. Okay, so that's your number one duty. Read, try to understand, and if you don't understand certain points, it's your duty to clearly pinpoint these points, which points you didn't understand, and try to ask this to your supervisor. Okay. Next is, just like in any profession, starting from simple to complex is a nice way of proceeding. So try to understand simple things first. So go from simple to complex, just like almost in everything. Three is, when you are reading certain things, you should create your own examples. For example, when you see a definition for the first time, immediately you should you should start thinking about examples. That's a very good suggestion for people, especially in mathematics. And number four, ask your supervisor things that you did not understand. Again, this is a delicate point. So you should at least identify the points that you did not understand clearly, right? Asking for general advice or certain thing will not be much helpful. All right, so you should clearly ask your instructor. For example, I did not understand this definition, or I did not understand this proof, or I did not understand the statement of this theorem. Okay, if you proceed in this way, that will be very healthy for your studies, right? But if you just ask a very general question to your instructor, for example, I did not understand this section, that will be a very broad thing to say, and then which will also make your instructor not know how to proceed, how to answer your question. Okay. And one of your duties also should be trying to find relevant work. Of course, your instructor will guide you, will suggest you to certain sources, but it is also your duty to find relevant work which was not suggested by an instructor. So if you should be able to go in searching database, etc. And I think this will be covered in this class. So that's one of the importance of this class, I think, how to find relevant work. So you should look at the papers that your instructor suggested, maybe look at the references of references, etc. Maybe some books that are related to the topic at hand. And again, that's something expected from you to be able to search literature for relevant work. Next thing is maybe one of the most important points is for you to meet with your supervisor regularly. So you should see your supervisor and meet with your supervisor regularly during your studies. And one point I can add here is that this maybe should come with your demand for meeting your supervisor regularly. Okay, so in normal circumstances, your supervisor should be like pushing you to meet with him or her regularly, but you also should be demanding about this, for meeting your supervisor regularly and discussing the relevant work. But for this, again, it boils down to you working hard on your assigned work. So if you work hard on the assigned work, you have a reason to meet your advisor, which makes you demanding for a meeting. And this should happen regularly. Ideally, I think at least once a week or twice a week, depending on the topic at hand. Okay, so I will repeat. So here you should not be passive here and expect your supervisor to suggest meeting regularly. You should be also demanding about this. And point number 7 is, of course, as a mathematician, you should learn LaTeX. This is extremely important because all written work in mathematics is done through LaTeX, so you should learn it. But we are in the age of internet, so you're lucky you can learn it easily by searching relevant sources or by asking help from your instructors. That will be also a good thing to do. All right. So this was about masters. Now let's talk about a PhD thesis. Okay, so first let's look at like some key points of a PhD thesis. What is expected from us? So first of all, unlike a master's thesis, we are expected to have an original and significant contribution to the current knowledge. Okay. Secondly, we should give evidence of originality. So what our work should be original, authentic, and the material should contain the material that contains should be worthy of publication. So in our case, in the case of mathematics, this means some significant, important results proven in your thesis, which is worthy of publication. And again, just like a master thesis, you should have a coherent text that presents the original results. So unlike a master's thesis, here you will present your original results, which require you to be extra careful about your thesis. And just like master's thesis, you should defend this in front of a committee. All right. So 5 key points. The major difference here being originality and authenticity, and containing significant contribution to the current knowledge. And of course, what is signified as significant contribution boils down to you and your advisor's communication skills. All right. Okay. Again, now similar to master's thesis, what should we expect from our supervisor in a PhD program? So we should expect, of course, our advisor or supervisor to help us to plan our own program of study and research, And for the PhD program, this is even more important than a master's program, because here it is like planning your at least 5 years of life, of your academic life. So this must be done carefully and with lots of thought going into it. Again, here the importance of you and your advisor, your supervisor, plays a key point. Second point here is that your supervisor should suggest directions of research they feel are likely to be interesting and profitable. This is again a very delicate point. So our advisor should suggest directions of research to us, which should be interesting, and by interesting we mean they should be prone to producing interesting results, which will interest possibly other researchers. And this should be also a direction which is profitable. And here, profitable, of course, is not in the meaning of economics, but profitable should be profitable in the academic sense. So first of all, this research direction should be able to potentially give rise to new academic achievements, new results, new discoveries. And also, these discoveries should be, in principle, result in publishable work. So that's what it means. Profitable here is in academic sense. And it is the duty of your supervisor to direct you in such a direction. Okay. And point 3 is the following: give you advice based on their experience as a researcher. Again, very important point. Your advisor should in a sense pass his or her experience as a researcher in that particular area of research to you. So they should give you lots of advice. For example, how to learn certain topic, which sources to see, what book to read, what book maybe not to read. Sometimes articles or books which are not written well will do you harm than good. Okay, and your advisor should be aware of such things and give advice based on such possibilities. Number 4 is provide you with feedback so that you have a clear idea how you are doing and comment on your progress. And now this is more important than a master's thesis. So here you should get feedback from your advisor about your academic progress. So you're going, first of all, about the pace. Again, you are going too fast, too slow, or you're jumping over fundamental things which will at the end do you harm. So you should maybe slow down and spend more time on certain topics, or not spend much time on certain topics which maybe not dominant in that particular research area. And also they should also be giving you feedback on whether you are in a good pace or slow pace. Maybe you should, in principle, start working more or more harder. Okay, so that's a very important point. And again, ideally, you should be pushing yourself for studying, so learning new things, understanding topics. But it's also the duty of your advisor to be demanding of you and demanding of your progress. And number 5 is give you advice on attending conferences to present your results. Again, your advisor should direct you to interesting conferences or seminars in which you can present your results. And these conferences and seminars should be chosen so that you can meet fellow researchers, people working in a similar area as you, and give you potential for collaboration with other researchers. So, and then your advisor should ideally direct you to such conferences. And again, here I also want to add that you yourself also should be able to follow the calendar of such conferences or seminars, and you should also maybe be willing to attend such things. Not just expect your advisor to direct you to such seminars, but you yourself also could discover such conferences and present your results. And number 6, which is related to the previous one, is that promote you to get in touch and do collaboration with other researchers in your field. Again, so as a newcomer to that particular field, you should use your advisor at least should be like a bridge between you and fellow researchers in that particular field. So he or she should introduce you to other people and provide you a way of connecting other people to do collaboration, to do research, or just to seek advice. That's also a good thing. So, for example, for some certain points, your advisor should be directed to the correct person. So, you have a question or you want to learn certain thing and you are not sure how to do it, your advisor should direct you to a person who will answer that particular need better than your advisor. Okay, and again here, you should not be passive in this context. What I mean by this is that you should be also willing to do collaboration, to get in touch with other people through your advisor, maybe possibly. So I suggest you being also active in this regard, not just expect your advisor to connect you with other people. You yourself also should be willing to do this connection. All right. What is expected from us as a PhD student is, first of all, work hard, as always, as you guessed. Third, meet your supervisor regularly. Again, your supervisor ideally should be pushing, demanding of this, but as I told in the master thesis, you also should be demanding of regular meetings with your advisor. And one suggestion here could be the following: if you work really hard and have something interesting to say, this will also make your advisor to meet with you regularly, because he or she will also enjoy these meetings because you study hard, you ask challenging questions, you make interesting remarks, you make interesting points. This will also motivate your advisor to meet regularly. And again, I strongly suggest being active in this regard. Number 4 is write up your original research in a proper form. Again, just like we expect, you should write a proper thesis with taking into account all the details of the thesis. I think we will talk about this also in this video. And again, you should defend your thesis in front of experts, just like in the master's thesis. Again, maybe here it's a good point to talk about. Let's go one slide back, and maybe we should talk also about things you should not expect from your supervisor. Just like in the master thesis, your supervisor will be a guide, but at the end, it's we should do the research, the investigation. Maybe in the PhD, since here the duration is longer, you should, of course, expect from an advisor to answer all your academic needs about questions, but maybe at a certain point, your advisor may also need some time to answering your questions or finding the relevant sources. So you should not expect immediate feedback on certain points here from your advisor. Okay, and after certain point in your research, after certain progress, you may be, because you are focusing on certain area and your advisor may focus on lots of other things, you may, for example, find some relevant work much faster than your advisor. So you should not expect your advisor to direct you to all related literature. Okay. And one key suggestion here before I move on to the next slide is that again your advisor is your guide, and it is you who will make most of this guide. So again, it boils down to your motivation about your research topic. All right. So what's expected from us that we covered. Now let's start talking about a thesis. So there are certain suggestions about writing a thesis. So first of all, it's a good advice to start writing a thesis as early as you can. Okay, because if you leave everything to the end and then start writing a thesis, it will be maybe you will miss lots of points and it will be too much work. So writing a thesis as early as you can is a very good advice. Okay, so for example, when you learn certain topics and you need to recall this in a thesis, maybe it's good to start writing this in a thesis format, at least in a draft, as a draft. And another very good important suggestion is the following: write up your results in full detail as soon as you can. So if you prove certain thing, if you made an observation, you should write it up in full detail as soon as you can. Because if you leave it in a draft, as a draft and without details, and you may forget it, you may not deliver it in full extent, because when you focus on something, you have the full power of your focus and you can write in full detail and full clarity. So this is a very important suggestion, is to write, as I said, as in LaTeX format, your results immediately, as soon as you prove certain things, write this. And it's always a good habit to go to your advisor with something typed in LaTeX, so that your advisor will read it much faster and can give feedback much faster. That's a good habit. All right. And now some things about the thesis. So a thesis should have certain characteristics. First is it should be self-contained. So think of a thesis just like a small book on certain topic, so that an interesting reader can take it and start reading it, and your thesis should contain the necessary background and necessary points. And maybe also, if it doesn't contain everything, it should contain a nice list of references which direct the interesting reader to the necessary sources. All right? So it should be something self-contained, which a mathematician with certain background should be able to take and read from the beginning to end. All right? Next point is that your thesis should include more details than a paper. So there is a fundamental difference between writing a thesis and a paper. So in a paper, most of the time you have a certain. So paper is first of all directed to experts in this particular topic, and the aim of the paper is to present these new results to the experts. So you may skip the details in a paper. I mean, background, etc. And also this also happens because in a paper the size of the paper is usually an issue for the journal. So the journal may ask you to write a shorter paper or remove certain pieces because they are contained in literature, etc. But in a thesis you don't have this problem. You can include many details, lots of background, of course, without overdoing this. And you can write much detail than a paper, so that somebody interested or somebody who wants to learn certain thing can benefit from your thesis. So in this regard, it's a very beneficial thing to be able to write longer in a thesis than a paper. As I said, your thesis should be like a book from beginning to end, ideally self-contained. And of course, there's a delicate balance here. It shouldn't contain unnecessary material. So things that are well known or things which are contained in many books, etc., shouldn't, of course, be rewritten in your thesis. But again, here this balance between self-containedness and no unnecessary material again also comes to your advisor, so he or she can really help you to finding this delicate balance between content and having too much material. And of course, your thesis should be extremely well organized. It should be well organized in terms of sections, in terms of references, in terms of writing, in terms of everything, in terms of numbering, theorems, figures, etc. It should be a very well organized document. Some small suggestions here. So if you copy text, put in quotation marks and cite the source, of course, it's extremely important. Everything that you don't write in your thesis yourself should have a proper reference, should be cited with a correct source, and you should cite it in the correct format. That's very important. Second is, do not copy proofs of theorems unless it is really necessary for the thesis. So that's a bad habit of copying the theorems, the proofs of theorems, unless you want to prove it in a different way. If you really need to copy a theorem, you should give proper credit and the reason why you copy it. Extremely important point is using correct English, grammar, spelling, and punctuation. So this is very, very important. At the end of this video, I will direct you to some sources when you can get help about this point. So your sentences should be easy to understand. You should use correct grammar, spelling, punctuation, etc. And for example, punctuation, as you guess, plays important. So using wrong punctuation could change to change what you want to say in a sentence. Okay, so this should be very well. It should be like in correct English. So just okay, just it contains mathematics doesn't mean the English language is not important. It's extremely important. You are trying to communicate certain ideas, and these should be in correct English language. Another suggestion is to make an outline early on. So you should have an outline of your thesis in terms of sections, chapters, subsections, etc. very early, so that you can work with this outline. And again, this you should do in collaboration with your supervisor. Okay, so ideally your supervisor should be included in making outline of your thesis early on, so that before you start, you know which sections will appear, which sections are connected, which chapters will appear in which order, etc. And in the first chapters of your thesis, you should describe the problem clearly and put it into a context. So here I really give emphasis to this word context. So your thesis should have a context, and so that I mean it puts your thesis in an important point in literature of your particular area of research. Your thesis must have a context, and you should clearly indicate this context in the first chapters. You should describe a problem with literature, with history, and then put your results into context relating to this problem. Which problem you solve, or which problems you answer in your thesis, etc. So that's extremely important, and will make your thesis a very, very useful document. And also, last point is that you should demonstrate a sound knowledge of existing work, give a critical survey. So your thesis should include a literature review with history, with existing work, etc. So that must be an important part of your thesis. And you should in your thesis touch upon the important parts of that particular area of research, and you should demonstrate that you have a sound knowledge of the existing work. You have an overview. You can see the big picture of the existing work. This you should be able to demonstrate in your thesis. And then the new material in your thesis, this should be main part of your thesis. Okay, so in the first chapters you describe the problem, existing literature, and the context, and then the next chapters, 3 to 4 chapters ideally, should be the main part of your thesis in which you demonstrate your original results. Okay, that's the important. For computational projects, normally a comparison with other methods is required. So for example, you devise an algorithm which does certain computation in more efficient way. Your thesis should include a comparison with existing algorithms. And in the conclusion section, you have to recap what you have done, the context of your results, and you also you should identify future research directions and open problems. You should suggest ideally some open problems related to your work, which will guide the interested reader. Okay, and since this is your work, you can write nice open problems which you think are important. And again, here is nothing prevents you from writing open problems, as long as they have, of course, they are meaningful in this context. Okay, now let's go into the more details about the structure of your thesis. So first of all, your thesis should contain an introduction section, which is the most important section, because it will motivate the people whether to read your thesis more or not, continue reading it. So you should define what your research is about, justify why it is important, explain your thesis structure. So your introduction should contain all of this. What is your research about? Why is it important? In the context of these topics, at which point is it important? Where does it lie in the big picture of things? And also you should explain what is the structure of your thesis. This is usually explained in this section, we do this, in this section we do explain this, etc. So it should contain a structure of your thesis. And extremely important again is that the introduction should be written at the end of the thesis. Once you are done with all parts, the main part, etc., you are done in the nice position of writing an introduction to your thesis, because now you know how it looks like. You have finished the main part. You can now write a nice introduction. That's a good advice. And again, as in the previous slide, background literature review. So you should put your research in the context, and you should give the cite necessary literature. And again, this shouldn't be like bombarding the reader with literature. Your research should clearly fit into some point in the history of things, right? Again, this is a very delicate point. And then about methods, you should explain methods, theoretical approaches. So if you use particular method of doing something, you should explain it clearly with correct citations, etc. And then for things which include applied portions, you should give theoretical approaches, maybe background. Analysis results. So this will include your results, experiments, comparison to other methods, proofs of theorems. So usually we in mathematics prove theorems or devise some methods and compare. But also now, recently there is also some branch called experimental mathematics. I think there's even a journal devised to experimental mathematics. So this all should be included in your analysis results part of your section. And then interpretation discussion, you should justify your interpretations, put them into context. Again, you see this word, this is the third time that the word context appears. So your thesis should have a context. It's not just it shouldn't be just some text which contains some proofs of theorems. You should give meaning to these theorems, to these results, putting them in context in the existing literature. And then about conclusion, it's usually short, not too long. and in which you also devise or suggest some future research areas. Okay. And then at the end, of course, your thesis contains a nicely organized bibliography. So the publications that you cite in your dissertation are listed at the end of the bibliography or references in correct format. So you should see the thesis. You should see the thesis manual of our university, which will tell you in which format you should cite. And citations also should be done in a systematic way. Maybe a small suggestion here is that when you learn LaTeX, you should also learn how to cite things in LaTeX and how to create a BibTeX reference list, so that you have a systematic way of citing papers. All right. By the way, about bibliography, your bibliography should contain almost all necessary work, so you shouldn't miss out things. All right, and you should also cite important articles related to your research area. So it should be a complete list of references. Okay, about the format of the thesis, our university has a thesis manual. When you click on this link, you can go to this thesis manual, and then we are in mathematics department are connected to the Graduate School of Natural and Applied Sciences, which has its own thesis manual. I think this can be now updated. I don't know if there's an updated version. And you should read this thesis manual carefully, which tells you what the form of the thesis is. And it gives usually lots of detail about how things are cited, how are the captions, how should the table of contents look like, etc. You should read it carefully. And one thing is that this manual is updated, sometimes even yearly. So you should find the latest version of the thesis manual and read it carefully. For example, when I was writing my thesis, the thesis manual was updated and certain things were changed in the previous version, from the previous version. So I had to change them in my thesis. For example, some rules about sections was changed, so I had to update my thesis at the end. So find the thesis manual and read it carefully. Maybe I don't know whether these links work, but let's try this one. To show you how a thesis manual looks like. So this is from 2018, but maybe it's updated. Please check. So it says instructions for preparation of thesis. So it's a file which is okay. So it writes who people listed. So here is the table of contents. So general policies, guidelines, font, spacing, margins. You see, it's very detailed. Centering, word and text divisions, pagination, multiple volumes, binding. It's very detailed. And then what is included should include the title page, approval page, etc., etc. List of symbols, how the dedication is written, how quotations are written, etc. Okay, and then there are here samples of pages, sample of abstract, sample of dedication page, etc. So I suggest when you are at the point of writing your thesis, before writing, you should take a look at this document. All right, this is an extremely important document. All right. Now let's talk specifically about mathematics. So there are certain things which specifically you should take into consideration when writing mathematics. First of all, you have to be as clear as possible, which in mathematics requires you to be very precise. So you yourself may already suffered the lack of precision in mathematics. So if you're reading certain book and certain phrase is not written precisely, you may have a difficult time understanding it or understanding in a different way, which may be the root of your problem. Let's say you don't understand certain definition, and the problem may be that it was not written very precisely. So same is true for your thesis or anything, any of your mathematical writing, whether it's a thesis or it's a book or it's a article. You have to be as clear as possible, all right, and very precise. And while doing this, you may feel frustrated, maybe writing things simply, but simple is I think good. So once the simpler you write, the precise and the clear you will be. Okay, don't hesitate to write simple, clear, precise sentences. Next point is to communicate mathematics by English text. Okay, so it should be a text which a person can start reading, and it's not a mere sequence of equations and formulas or sequence of lemmas, theorems, proofs, etc. It should use the English language in an efficient, good way, so that some person reading it has an easy time. Third suggestion is to use editorial we rather than I and minimize the use of we. Okay, so instead of in this, for example, you want to say in this lemma I prove, instead of this you should write in this lemma we prove. So you should use the editorial we, and try to use it as less as possible. All right, if you keep repeating we, it after some time becomes not nice. Next point is to give your text structure by breaking it into definitions, theorems, lemmas, examples, remarks, and so on. Use numbering so that you can refer to them later. Again, for mathematicians especially, this is a very, very important point. So your text should have a structure, so sections numbered, definitions numbered, theorems, lemmas, examples, remarks, and so on numbered, and correct reference to these numberings. For example, if you use certain lemma in proving certain things, you should say by lemma 15, all right? So that the person that doesn't remember lemma 15 can go and look at lemma 15 again. So this should be done very precisely in a mathematical text. There's no room for error, otherwise the reader may misunderstand you. And one suggestion here is when you learn LaTeX, learn how to number lemmas, examples, definitions, theorems automatically. So LaTeX can automatically number these. You shouldn't number lemmas, theorems, etc., definitions by your own. Each lemma, definition, theorem, etc., should be numbered by LaTeX. So that if you refer to them, you refer by label, so that if you add another lemma in between two lemmas, the numbers will change. But if you do it automatically in LaTeX, it will change accordingly. So you don't have to fix everything from the beginning. All right. Next is separate mathematical expressions by text, not just punctuation marks. All right. This is important. So if you separate mathematical text by punctuation marks, it usually becomes a little bit ambiguous and hard to follow. So you should use text if necessary, to separate mathematical expressions. And a good suggestion is that you should avoid starting a sentence with a variable or a mathematical expression. This is a maybe good rule of thumb because this makes readability better. If you start a sentence with a variable or some mathematical expression, it usually doesn't look nice and it's not nice to read. All right, this is a good suggestion. Some more suggestions here. First of all, you think hard about your notation. Do not name everything at once. Again, a very delicate point. So, first of all, before writing your thesis, you should fix a nice notation, which, if standard, should use standard notation. So if most of, okay, so in mathematics you see that there are certain notations, there are various notations for certain things, but for certain things the notation is more or less standard. So if you talk about such notions, you should follow a more or less standard notation. And your notation should be consistent throughout your thesis. You shouldn't change your notation in the middle of your thesis. And of course, you shouldn't invent your own notation. That's the second point. So you can do it unless it's really necessary. You can invent, but don't invent your own notation unless it's really necessary. I have observed some people have tendency of inventing notation. Okay, but don't do it. Use the existing notation. Don't invent, because it will make reading your thesis a nightmare. And there's one thing I missed in the previous point. It says do not name everything at once. Again, things should have names if that's necessary. All right. So if you name a certain object with a letter, there should be a need for this. If you give letters, symbols to everything, that will be your thesis will look like a bunch of like a chaos of symbols. So name things which are really deserving to have a name. Otherwise, it will be impossible to follow your arguments. And third point, again important, is clarity comes before elegance. Okay, so some people again have this tendency to make things look elegant, but this may hinder you from writing clearly. So your first aim should be clarity and then elegance. All right. Then when you include computer programs in your dissertation, usually in the appendix, make sure they are readable. All right. So if you write a computer program, not just put some bunch of codes there. Your code should have proper comments, right? So that the person wanting to read your computer code really understands what is going on in the code. All right. Explain your computer programs in particular on a high level that says what they do rather than how they do things. Okay. Again, some computer programs may need explanation what they do. All right. So this program does this in this way. So that needs explanation. You should include this. And one can add more points here. And here I put two references for people who want to investigate this. So first is by Halmos, is called How to Write Mathematics. So this is available as a it's like a short paper, which is very nice in my opinion. You should make use of it. And also, I also suggest a book of Stephen Krantz. It says A Primer of Mathematical Writing. I think you can find this book in our library, or I found a draft on archive. But of course, reading something from the original book is always good. So I suggest you read this or have a look at it at least, just even if like just like an overview. It will, I'm sure, it will be beneficial for your mathematical writing. Okay, and remember the following. So you are trying to communicate ideas to some person. So your thesis, your paper is not just things written on a paper. Somebody will read it. Somebody will try to understand it. So this should be in your mind while writing. And one thing is that mathematics is hard, and it's hard to communicate. So it requires very precision and very effort to be a good way of communication. And just before I finish the video, I want to let me go next. I want to bring into your attention the Academic Writing Center of Middle East Technical University. I want to go to this website and show you this website. So this is the link, AWC method. This is the Academic Writing Center. Okay, so maybe I just read this. So it says, welcome to the School of Foreign Languages Academic Writing Center. AWC has qualified tutors available to help you with any of your academic writing needs. So this is a very nice. This is a part of our university which is designated for our writing needs. Okay, it could be some text you write for a newspaper, some academic article. It could be your thesis. It could be anything. So there are people who are qualified in writing in the English language, for which you can go visit and get help. And this is extremely useful. For example, I myself, while writing my thesis benefited from such a institution. All right, I went there. I had some problems about the structure of my introduction. I showed them. They gave me really good feedback, and which really improved the readability of my thesis. And I suggest, if you have time, making use of this. And I think here, so you see there are lots of information here. If you click who can come here, it says postgraduate students, research assistants, faculty. So all of us are qualified to go there. And it says when to come. So you can come to the writing center at different stages of your writing. During the tutorials, we help you develop your topic, proceed in your task, improve your paper's organization, clarity, cohesion, and content, use referencing tools, refine your self-editing skills. Okay, and here's a very important point. Here is an asterisk, is that please do not come with a finished draft that is to be edited proofread. So this is especially important. This is not a center in which you take your draft, like you take the draft of your thesis and tell them, okay, tell me, proofread this. This is not what this writing center is there for. Okay, this would be an impossible task. If everybody brings their thesis and let them proofread, they will not proofread your thesis. That's for sure. That's not their duty. Their duty is to help you with certain parts. For example, you could do the following. You could write your introduction and then take it to this academic writing center and ask them to give feedback on the structure. For example, you should I written in this structure, and they could give you, and they could give you feedback like about the structure of the paragraphs, etc., or the conclusion. Okay, so make use of this if you have time. And here is some links how we work. So I think they work with you have to get an appointment. And again, you see, they say they will not do translations, write a paper, etc. Last minute grammar check, proofreading. That's not what this is for. And here again, they have written in capital. This is not a center for proofreading, rewriting, or translating. Okay, this is a way for you to help your writing skills, and you should have concrete problems identified before you visit this center. Okay. So I want to finish with this. I want to bring into your attention the Academic Writing Center of our university, which I think is a very, very useful center. All right, so this is the end of this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask us. Unfortunately, this week, this week my plan was to make this as a live lecture, but unfortunately I had some other duty which I was unable to cancel, an exam duty. And when while I was planning to do this live, this was thought as to be like a debate or like a exchanging ideas. And please, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Okay, so I will see you in the next lecture.